What if the way we think about something as basic, as fundamental as water is just completely wrong?
Hmm.
Not just, scientifically a bit off, but fundamentally misunderstanding its nature, its energy,
Hmm.
maybe even its soul.
That's a pretty radical thought.
It is. And what if ignoring this deeper truth is actually causing huge problems for our environment, maybe even our own health?
It sounds challenging, but it's actually central to the work of Viktor Schauberger. He was an Austrian forester, a naturalist,
Right.
who saw nature very differently. Not something to just control or exploit, but more like a master teacher,
Yeah.
full of wisdom and energy.
Okay, so today we're doing a deep dive into some really powerful ideas. They're drawn from excerpts of The Water Wizard by Callum, which explores Schauberger's unique perspective.
It's fascinating material.
Definitely. And our mission here for this deep dive is to pull out the most vital insights from this. Schauberger's core beliefs about water, about natural energy, and what happens when we, well, fall out of sync with how nature actually works.
And why that might matter to you today.
Exactly. Why these ideas from nearly a century ago could still be incredibly relevant. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, Schauberger's whole way of thinking, it starts with a belief that's quite different from mainstream science. He saw nature working cooperatively. And water. Water was absolutely central to everything.
Not just AGO then.
Not at all. For him, it wasn't just a chemical compound. He really viewed it as a living thing, something with its own inner life, its own temperament. He even used words like psyche and character to describe it.
Yeah, I remember reading some really powerful language he used. He called water the upholder of the cycles, which supports the whole of life.
Mm-hmm.
And even said, in every drop of good spring water dwells the Godhead. There also dwells life, the soul of the first substance, water. I mean, that's worlds away from just seeing it as a resource, right?
Absolutely. And based on that view, he made some pretty remarkable claims about energy.
Like the power station comparison.
Exactly. He argued that more energy is encapsulated in every drop of good spring water than an average-sized power station is presently able to produce. He saw this huge latent energy within the water itself.
Something conventional physics was missing.
That's what he felt, yeah. He even touched on connections, like the energy concepts explored by Einstein, suggesting energy wasn't just conserved. He thought it could actually be increased in natural systems if we worked with nature's forces.
That law of anti-conservation of energy idea.
Right. It wasn't just about harnessing energy, but about unlocking nature's inherent power, its dynamism.
Okay, so if water has this inner life, this energy, it makes sense that not all water would be the same in his eyes. What did he see as, healthy, natural water versus the other kind?
Yeah, his ideal water is cool. It needs to be around +4 degrees Celsius. That's about 39 Fahrenheit.
Why that specific temperature?
He called it the anomaly point. It's where water is densest, and he argued most energetic, most vital. And this water, it needs to flow protected from direct sun and heat. Ideally, in darkness or diffused light, like under trees in a forest.
And the movement is key too, right? Not straight lines.
Crucially, it has to move naturally, in spirals, whirls, meanders.
I remember those descriptions. A sparkling, lively, translucent stream, bubbling, gurgling, whirling, and gyrating. It just sounds alive.
It does, doesn't it? And he believed that specific motion, he called it cycloid space curve motion, sort of like a gentle corkscrew path along with the cool temperature. That's what maintained the water's vital energy, its dynogens, and its purity.
Okay.
This healthy water, he said, is perfectly structured. It can carry minerals, elements, and it can even self-cool. He also talked about mature water, water that's developed underground and rises naturally when it's, quote, ripe.
And how does that stack up against how we usually handle water, especially in our modern systems, pipes and rivers?
Well, we tend to do pretty much the opposite of everything he thought was essential.
Like what?
We expose it to direct sun and heat, often by cutting down forests near waterways. We straighten river channels, force it into unnaturally straight lines. We use mechanical pumps, turbines, things that violently break down its structure.
And push it through straight pipes, often metal ones?
Exactly. Pipes made of metal or concrete. Materials he thought were harmful.
And according to Schauberger, doing all this,
Yeah.
it has serious consequences.
Oh, profound consequences. He saw too much heat and direct light as water's #1 enemy. Simple as that.
Destructive.
Totally. He argued that forcing water mechanically, stopping its natural flow, it literally destroys its inner energy. And this makes the oxygen it carries aggressive instead of life-giving.
Which explains things like corrosion in pipes,
Precisely. Corrosion in pipes, damage to turbines, and he made a really startling claim that this kind of water becomes disease-carrying. He even described it flowing through arteries suffused with cancerous decay.
Wow, that's strong language.
It is. This devitalized water, as he saw it, can't hold minerals properly, so they drop out, it loses quality. It also loses its ability to transport sediment naturally. Instead, it causes bank erosion, drops sediment where you don't want it, basically causing the exact problems river engineers are trying to fix.
So the conventional engineering, the stuff designed to control water, might actually be making things worse. Might be the root of the problem.
That was exactly Schauberger's argument. He drew a direct line from our actions, especially how we treat forests and water, to widespread ecological problems, even to health issues.
Let's dive into that connection then.
Yeah.
Starting with forests, he saw them as critical, right?
Absolutely essential. He called the forest the habitat of water, and as such, the habitat of life processes. Couldn't be clearer. His criticism of things like clear felling was really intense.
Why? What did he see happening?
Well, you remove the trees, you remove the shade, the ground heats up, the water heats up, and that, he claimed, fundamentally messes up the whole natural water cycle.
How so?
It leads to mountain springs drying up, changes groundwater flow.
Right.
It disturbs what he called the Earth's blood circulation. Again, seeing water as the planet's lifeblood.
In disturbing that circulation,
Yeah.
what are the knock-on effects?
He argued that heating and drying the soil, and he pointed out dry soil heats up way faster than water, like 5 times faster, causes degeneration in the plants, disease, decay in the trees themselves, like white rot, red rot.
Okay.
And he even controversially extended this to human society. He linked this kind of environmental damage to physical and moral degeneration in people living in those areas.
That's quite a claim.
It is. He made a very stark statement. Every economic death of a people is always preceded by the death of its forests. He saw the health of the forest and the health of a civilization as totally intertwined.
A really sobering thought. And then there's the impact on rivers, which you mentioned. He hated the idea of straightening them.
Hated it. He saw it as a fundamental mistake. He argued, and this sounds counterintuitive, the more the engineer endeavors to channel water by the shortest and straightest route to the sea, the more the flow of water weighs into the bends, the longer its path and the worse the water will become.
Wait, so trying to make it shorter actually makes the path longer and the water worse?
According to him, yes, because you destroy that natural, energetic, spiraling motion. The water loses its vitality, becomes sluggish, drops sediment, erodes banks. Basically, it becomes destructive.
And he even connected this river damage directly to disease spread.
He did, and it's one of his most controversial points. He stated that the spreading of the most terrible disease of all, of cancer, is the necessary consequence of such unnatural regulatory works.
Wow. So destroying the water's life force creates conditions for illness.
That was his belief. He argued that conventional river management, trying to prevent floods and erosion, often ends up causing them because it ignores how water naturally behaves.
Yeah.
He pointed to examples like the regulation of the Danube River. He claimed engineering efforts there actually created a massive floodplain, turning nearly 1 million hectares into flood-prone land, precisely because they didn't understand the water's dynamics.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and maybe challenging for some listeners. Schauberger's explicit claims linking water quality directly to human health problems, even something as serious as cancer.
Yes, this is definitely highly controversial, but it was absolutely central to his warnings. His view was that drinking water that's lost its vitality, water that's, low quality, deficient in what he called carbones, vital subtle energies or elements, and too rich in aggressive oxygen because of how it's been handled, leads to a kind of degeneration, both mental and physical, in people and animals drinking it.
How? What was the mechanism he proposed?
He believed it weakened the body's natural defenses, made it less able to fight off viruses, germs, and potentially, yes, cancer cells. He contrasted this sharply with healthy water, which he claimed supported beneficial microbes that could actually break down harmful organisms.
And he tried to back this up.
He cited statistics trying to show a correlation between higher cancer rates and areas that lacked good natural spring water. Again, very controversial, but that was his argument.
So what about chemical treatments? Like adding chlorine to municipal water supplies? He wouldn't have approved that, I assume.
No, not at all. Schauberger was deeply skeptical of using chemicals for purification. He saw it as a flawed approach.
Why flawed? It kills bacteria, right?
It does, but he felt the focus should be on restoring the water's natural vitality and its proper temperature. create conditions where harmful bacteria simply can't thrive, rather than just carpet bombing everything with chemicals. He thought that just further killed the water and could even contribute to disease itself.
Okay, and what about getting the water to us, the pipes we use?
Oh, he had strong opinions there too. Materials mattered hugely to him. He felt iron pipes, for example, imparted a pernicious and second-rate psyche onto the water, negatively influencing its subtle energies.
Seriously, the pipe material affects its psyche.
That was his view, yes.
Yeah.
And he warned strongly against tar lining, which was common then and still used sometimes. He cited it as a known carcinogen and claimed drinking water from tar-lined pipes could weaken the blood over time, leading to degeneration. He even linked it to what he called syphilitic diseases because of this weakened state.
So just the pipe itself and whether the water warms up inside it, that could actively harm you in his model.
Absolutely. That was his deep concern. He said if water warms up in pipes, its carbones and oxygen become aggressive. This leads to corrosion, yes, but if you drink it, it starts unhealthy transformation processes inside your body. He also linked things like kidney diseases to this de-energizing effect, calling them de-energizing phenomena. He claimed that drinking high-quality, noble water, as he put it, could actually help the body expel things like kidney stones. The focus was always on restoring water's inherent healthy energy.
It's clear he had a lot of criticisms of conventional practices, but he wasn't just critical, right? He developed solutions based on that principle. Comprehend and copy nature. What did those look like?
Yes, he proposed many practical ideas, all designed to work with water's natural tendencies, not against them.
Like for getting water from a spring.
For capturing springs, yeah. He suggested looking at ancient methods, simple things like using a sealed stone slab over the spring source, keeping it dark, protected, letting the water rise naturally only when it was ripe underground.
Letting nature lead, essentially.
Exactly. And for storing water, he was a huge fan of egg shapes, or forms based on egg curves.
Why egg shapes?
Because they don't have stagnant corners. They promote natural circulation and vitality, mimicking forms you see everywhere in nature. He also liked terracotta vessels, especially if you put them in shaded, airy spots.
Terracotta, like clay pots.
Yeah. The natural porosity lets some moisture evaporate, which cools the water inside naturally, bringing it down towards that vital +4°C point.
Clever. What about improving water we already have, like from rivers or reservoirs? Could his ideas help there?
He thought so. He suggested simple, natural filtration, like digging wells near the riverbank or reservoir edge, letting the water seep through the natural sand and gravel. Kind of like how a natural spring gets purified.
Makes sense.
For dams, he had interesting ideas about controlling the temperature of the water released, using mechanisms that reacted to water density to make sure the colder, denser, healthier water was released downstream properly. He even suggested wetting dam walls with cold, +4°C water could actually seal the pores and make the dam stronger.
Fascinating. And for transport? If metal pipes were bad, what did he suggest?
He argued strongly for natural materials, things that don't conduct heat well and mimic nature's own designs. He thought wood was the most suitable material.
Wood, like wooden pipes. Would they last?
He pointed to the capillary structure in plants as the best model for moving water. He argued against concrete and metal as being unsuitable for the Earth's blood. And interestingly, yes, he claimed that properly treated wooden pipes could actually last longer than iron ones.
But maybe his most famous invention related to pipes was the double spiral flow pipe.
Ah, yes. That's a key example of his whole approach. It was a pipe designed with spiral veins inside. He often suggested using materials like silver for them and sometimes added cooling coils around it.
And the point was?
The whole purpose was to force the water into a natural vortex motion as it flowed. This specific spiraling action, he claimed, does several things. It cools the water towards +4°C, it increases the absorption of beneficial gases or carbones, it concentrates these vital elements in the center.
Well, the oxygen interacts differently.
Right, the oxygen interacts beneficially at the periphery. He believed this motion actually generated energy, allowed the water to self-purify, and made it transport sediment way more efficiently, even stuff heavier than water, preventing blockages and erosion.
So, okay, this is more than just better plumbing then. Did he think we could actually generate usable energy from water or air using these principles?
Oh, absolutely. Schauberger wasn't just trying to fix existing water systems. He spent years working on devices to generate energy directly from water and air. By harnessing these natural motions, he observed these dynagens, or dynamic energies, creating things he called energy eggs.
This connects to his idea of implosion, right?
Exactly. He saw implosion, like the inward spiraling motion of a vortex, as nature's super efficient, resistance-free way of moving energy. He contrasted it with our technology, which mostly relies on explosion, like in engines, which he saw as destructive and wasteful. He was trying to tap into natural forces like, well, like levitation or upward impulsion.
Which brings us to that amazing story about him making sparks underwater. How did that fit in?
Right, that demonstration where he'd rub specific types of stones together underwater and they'd apparently produce light, sparks.
Triboluminescence.
Yes. For him, that wasn't just a party trick. It was proof that energy isn't only released through heat or friction in the ways we normally think. He believed it showed latent energy stored within crystalline structures and within water itself that could be released through the right kind of natural motion and pressure.
And it mattered which stones he used.
He emphasized that. Stones from high mountains, upper river reaches, places where he felt they retained their inner energy worked best. It all tied back to his idea that healthy, naturally flowing water stores and releases these vital energies.
It's just so clear that these ideas were, well, completely out there compared to the established science and engineering of his time. He even said it himself, didn't he? Our accustomed way of thinking is opposed to the true workings of nature.
And because of that, he faced a lot of resistance. His observations, his conclusions, they often flew directly in the face of accepted hydraulic principles and standard engineering practices.
Can you give an example?
Well, there's a notable story involving Professor Philip Forchheimer, a really respected hydrologist at the time. He was asked to assess one of Schauberger's log flumes.
The one that saved a lot of money.
That's the one. It apparently made logs heavier than water float easily, saving something like 90% on transport costs. Forchheimer was reportedly just completely baffled at first, shocked by its efficiency.
Did he come around?
The story goes that, despite his initial skepticism, Forchheimer did eventually come to appreciate some of Schauberger's insights, especially the importance of water temperature and the efficiency of that spiral cycloid motion before he died.
But not everyone was that open-minded, I gather.
Oh, definitely not. The Ehrenberger affair is a pretty stark example of the pushback he got. Dr. Ehrenberger, a government advisor, tried to publicly disprove Schauberger's theories using math.
And Schauberger responded.
He wrote a detailed refutation, but the publisher of the scientific journal where Ehrenberger's critique appeared basically refused to print it unless Schauberger paid an outrageous sum. Fear of official backlash, basically. They were worried about an official ban on publishing anything more about Schauberger, so they effectively suppressed his response. Schauberger really felt that bureaucratic inertia and entrenched academic views actively worked to silence him.
Wow. Yet despite all that opposition, he did have some undeniable successes, didn't he? He got some validation.
He did. I mean, the log flume worked incredibly well. That was hard to deny. He was granted what they called pioneer patents for some inventions. Some of his ideas did get support from university experts and official opinions.
And high-level people were interested.
Yes, he was actually invited to discuss his ideas with figures like the King of Bulgaria, even the German Prime Minister at one point. So clearly, some people in power saw the potential practical value, or at least the intriguing nature of his work, even if the underlying science baffled the mainstream.
How did Schauberger himself make sense of this constant friction, this conflict?
He saw conventional methods as just being based on fundamental academic errors in mass motion. He truly believed established science simply didn't understand how nature really moves and energizes itself.
And the sparks underwater, things like that.
While some might have dismissed demonstrations like the sparks as, a fairy tale experience or something unscientific, he believed he was simply observing and revealing deep natural laws that had been forgotten or were being actively ignored.
And he worried about this knowledge.
He expressed deep concern about misuse. He felt he was uncovering ways to harness elemental forces in miniature machines, and he warned strongly against giving that kind of power to people who lacked wisdom. He compared it to placing lightning in the hands of babes.
So let's bring it back to us here today. Why should you listening, pay attention to these, frankly, century-old conflicts and these very unconventional ideas from Viktor Schauberger now?
Well, Schauberger believed that ignoring these fundamental natural principles wasn't just about inefficient engineering or environmental damage, as bad as those are. He warned it would lead to the dying of the whole.
The dying of the whole.
Yes,
Right.
the qualitative physical deterioration of all organisms. And he included in that a potential moral, intellectual, and spiritual decline as well. It was all connected for him.
So his work is more than just history.
I think it serves as an inspiration, as Coates puts it, for all those who wish to see our precious Earth saved from extinction by short-sightedness. It really urges us, maybe challenges us, to question the basic assumptions behind how we interact with nature, how we use technology, how we manage resources.
And to consider alternatives.
Exactly. To seriously consider if aligning ourselves with nature, learning from it, copying it, rather than constantly trying to conquer and control it, might be the only path towards a genuinely healthier future. For us, and for the planet.
So we've taken quite a journey into Viktor Schauberger's world today. We've explored his radical view of water as a living entity, not just a substance. We've understood his focus on temperature, on natural spiraling motion, the vital role of forests.
And contrasted that with his sharp critiques of our usual methods, the straightening, the heating, the mechanical handling.
Right. And we've touched on his controversial links between degraded water and health, and glimpsed the potential he saw in solutions that truly try to comprehend and copy nature.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is.
Yeah.
Hopefully this deep dive encourages you, listening now, to maybe look at the water in your own life, whether it's a river, a lake, or even just coming out of your tap a little bit differently, to perhaps ponder the unseen life and energy that Schauberger was so convinced it held.
And maybe this raises an important question for you to consider. What if the deepest secrets, the secrets of life, of energy, of health, what if they aren't hidden away in complex equations or waiting for some super advanced machine to unlock them? What if they're actually being openly demonstrated right in front of us every single day? In the simplest, most overlooked natural processes, like the quiet way a spring bubbles up from the earth, or the way a healthy stream spirals through a forest, or just the cool protective shade under the trees. What if nature's been showing us all along?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.